So, episode 25, it's great to have you back, honestly, but I've been fucking struggling for the last 2 episodes. I'm only joking.
I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, fair. You missed our podcast, but how have you been?
Yeah, look, all good. I suppose today is, the idea of today's chat is just about some chats I get into, like here in the gym with people and parents, just about levels and understanding, aligning goals with what really is possible. And like, by no means is this podcast to come across as a dampener at all for anyone who's aspiring. It's just kind of maybe stuff I've learned over the years and stuff I passionately believe in around understanding the journey, you know what I mean, before you even go on it. So I think one of the bigger mistakes the biggest mistakes people make is they just jump in. They don't necessarily understand the journey. Like anything, I suppose, if you're going to want to achieve or succeed in something, what does success look like? And that question is not often asked to kids, especially.
Speaking of success, just before we get into all that, super performance by Ludvig Åberg in the Genesis.
Yeah, unbelievable. And again, like that relates slightly to this chat, because a couple of years ago I did all right in the British Am in Lytham. So for anyone listening, the British Amateur is the biggest amateur event that we would play this side of the Atlantic, let's say, 288 players, and the winner, you know, famously gets the Open, the Masters, and the US Open now, so it's an unbelievable prize. So I got to the last 8, and the morning of the quarterfinal, you know, it's just a quiet place, has been busy all week, and you're starting to feel that one of the 8 has a chance of winning, obviously. And Peter Hansen, the Swedish Ryder Cup player, caddies for Ludvig. I'm not sure, is he his coach, manager, probably a combination of everything. And Ludvig was right next to me, and sometimes you hear a sound that's just different. And when you hear that sound repeating next to you, you obviously will take a look. And Ollie Potgieter, who won it, who I've played with a fair bit since, and he's gone on to nearly get his PGA Tour card. But anyway, he won on the Corn Ferry there, you know, first year out. Like, superb player. Those two now really stood out, but Ludvig was different, you know, he was just different. It was pretty impressive.
As well, I've seen a lot about how repeatable his swing is, people talking about how consistent he has been. Is that something that would always stand out to you?
Yeah, again, that comes back to repeatable windows, flights, strikes, noises. You know, doesn't happen by accident. I mean, there's a set of components that make all that stuff happen. He was probably hitting 4 irons. Divot pattern was amazing, strike was amazing, windows, and that every best player that I've ever seen or been around, they all have that trait. And it comes back to, you know, I'll have this debate or argument with anyone. It's just sound technique, end of story. And then, you know, all right, I accept that someone can manage that level of a technical control, let's say, easier than the next person, or someone might achieve it being a much more technically minded individual. I can align to that for sure, but the net result is they're very technically proficient and they can repeat over time, and they can apply their other skill sets then with that, which makes them killers in the golfing world, you know.
Yeah, and he's a cool customer as well. Yeah. So
you can see he's enjoying it. Even that first Masters that he kind of was in the mix, and it transpired. I think he hit in the water on 11. And the fight was over. He still smiled his way to the finish. I remember sending that into our group chat here, because, you know, knowing everyone was watching the Masters, a lot of young kids in that group chat, and, you know, just take a look at his attitude, you know. So he must know behind his eyes that his time is coming, you know what I mean? So he knows how good he is as well, and he probably knows that, you know, back in the back room when it's team Ludvig, like, they know that they're in a good place, you know. So you can see that.
So getting into it, so I suppose you have had multiple conversations over the years, and it's a very common theme with parents, with guardians, with the youth athlete itself. When is the right time to even start considering getting into the pro ranks?
Yeah, so, well, I suppose I think about this all of the time. You know, I played a thing years ago. It's like a Great Britain and Ireland Walker Cup team. It's called the Concession Cup, and Peter McIlroy was the captain. And we just got into a conversation all that week, how, I won't say how wrong it is, but how easy it is for someone to just decide to turn professional as a golfer, right? little or no credentials, it can happen. That you can just put your name on the bag, get down to a certain handicap, play a level of professional golf, and then all of a sudden you're a pro. Now, that does not sit well with me, because you're not, well, you are a pro. Like, I know people now will have, this is going to divide lots of opinion, which is a good thing, right? But I suppose where I sit on this, and I've said this numerous times, the direct path, or the only path to prove out whether you're good enough or not from a qualification standpoint, is you make it through European Tour qualifying, or, you know, you might get an invite and get a top 10 and move on from there. Who knows? There's a few, but you do it on merit at the highest level, right? So, yeah, that is and I think with that presents, now look, there's an element of commercial, you know, third tier tours coming and going. That presents an opportunity for guys just to pay their money and, you know, fight off for 5 Challenge Tour cards. Grand, like, that's a business, Euro Pro Tour and clutch tours and so on. But the percentages, we can go into that, the statistical percentages of you progressing out of that, coming from that level. Now, there's the Matt Wallaces and, you know, the guys who are, there's always one or two who are exception to the rule. But this all comes back to trying to get people aware of, well, if your goal is to turn pro and you end up on the Euro Pro Tour after 2-3 years, unlikely that's going to transpire into the goal. If your goal is, oh, I want to play on the DP World Tour. And if you're able to say those words, what I always am trying to say to people, do you actually understand how good that is, right? And like, when you pull it back, you might say, all right, let's look at the 115 player who kept their card. Let's look at their world ranking. Let's look at their handicap in the Turn Pro. Now, this is me having a conversation with a young player, let's say. Where are you with that? Now, let's go down to 300 or 200 or whatever. Just to give it kind of a, like, might have an all right moment, right? But the other thing is, then I have he's now 4, and we go to the driving range, and he can hit it. He can hit the ball, and, you know, there's obviously a pride of your son hitting shots and so on, like, but I see, and I have heard over the years, that 4-year-old turns into a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and they progress. And it's like, you know, literally, I've heard the words, oh, that's my pension plan there. And I'm like, my God, you should be on another side of the country away from your kid when he's playing golf, clearly, right? Now, I get the excitement, and, you know, who knows that development? Does it go in the hockey stick? Does it change? You know, is that child designed for a single person sport? You know, all of those things need to be figured out. So again, this came up recently with a parent and a young lad, good player, provincial player, not international player yet. Will he be an international player? Potentially, but what does that mean either, right? So, but the goals are lofty, very lofty. And my fear is there's no knowledge within that camp at all. There's no one around the table to advise that has experienced the different levels, what it takes, the milestones. He probably is past a lot of the milestones he needs to achieve already. But then there is always that outlier, who knows, look at this guy, he did this at that age, and so on and so on. But you really have to bring it back to, statistically, what is the likelihood here? And what journey are you going to potentially go with your family and whoever else wants to support, which is great. But, like, you know, and this will sound like a dampener comment. You know, I always kind of say it would be great if there was a Simon Cowell equivalent in golf at times to come in and go, sorry, you're not going forward here, or it is recommended that you maybe put the handbrake on here and just be a good amateur or save yourself. But again, like, the counter to that is, who is anybody to throw a wet blanket on someone's dreams? You know what I mean? It's a really tough one, because I suppose having lived it, back and forth, trying for years and years and years to be the best you can, and then ending up with what you end up with, knowing what your mindset was as a younger player. Like, I was completely blind when I turned pro, like, completely blind, it was all, let's just see what happens. Roll the dice, roll the dice, roll the dice.
Okay. But on that, what were the key traits, you versus the players you would have come up with, you making it on the Challenge Tour for a couple of years versus the rest who just didn't?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't see the Challenge Tour as any milestone whatsoever as an achievement. For me personally, it's actually a little bit of a disappointment, but I was left off an Irish team, and I kind of said, let's go to tour school, and I got all the way to the final stage. So then I had a Challenge Tour card. Great. I was still the same player. I was still the same player that did not make the Irish team, right? So in one breath, there's 10 guys ahead of me back home. You know, someone will say, oh, you're leapfrogging all those guys. I didn't ever see it like that. I just wanted to see what was next. So look, that was, again, roll the dice. It took me a couple of years. There was a little bit of, you know, imposter syndrome. You're around better players technically. I was always mindful of, I'm not technically good enough here, but I'm going to play anyway. And I did okay. I kept my card on the Challenge Tour, but that's a given level. So then when I came back amateur, I applied myself like you couldn't believe to make my technique as good as I could make it, and then had a good amateur career, let's say, on the back of that. And it was because I had more awareness, more control, more knowledge of me and how I move and my swing and so on. So then I could rely on it. So then when I was more confident, it gave me even more confidence. So that's kind of, now had I known about that, and to be frank, had I probably worked with Foxy in a previous life, who knows what would have happened, right? And that's another thing, making sure that the old thing of just because, and there'll be coaches around now trying to throw darts at me for saying this, but it's a fact. Just because a childhood coach brings you to a certain point doesn't mean that they're the right coach for you. It just does not mean that. And so many players, in my experience that I've been around, have been too nice to make that cut. That, right, you know, and some people would say, well, you've gotten to this level, why would you change anything? And I'm kind of saying, well, there's always a better level of information available the higher level you go. And it's not about necessarily, right, I'm cutting everyone off here. I might bring in another set of eyes here. Are you open to that? Let's try and all learn together. So there's a lot there. But sorry, this is just, again, on that chat I had with this young lad and his dad. And there's so many ways to do it, but I would love if people would just take a little minute to think about, right, hang on now, are we as good as we think we are here? Do the results stack up? Like, when I was a kid, it used to always be said, well, if you're not dominating the Irish amateur scene, it's unlikely you're going to succeed, right? It's a pretty good, even now, a pretty good barometer, right? If you're not, like if I saw someone come along and win, whatever, 2-3 championships in a season, I'd say, well, right, okay, there's something going on here, right? And if they did it again the following season, like I remember when McDowell came, he literally breezed through in 2000, and he cleaned up. He just cleaned up college events, youth events, senior events, second in the World Universities, I think, kicked ass for Ireland and went on to be Graham McDowell, you know? Yeah. That's how, and then was kicking ass in the States as well.
So would they be considered your milestones, like you mentioned the milestones that...
Like there's a lot of kids now going to the States. There's another thing that really bugs me, right? And look, it's life, right? If you're a good enough player, college coaches will go after you, right? But then a commercial entity enters this stage. Fair play to them, great idea. I'm going to do all the red tape for you, and I'm going to find you a college because, let's call a spade, you can't find your own college, right? So they pay for this, and then I know some college coaches in the States, and we have this chat, and they were like, but sure, if that crowd came to me with a player, I wouldn't go near them because I want to go and find my players, right? Again, that's life. But I sometimes feel that those kids are just going into the unknown. They're literally going into the unknown. They're clearly not going to the best program. They're paying for the privilege, that's fine. But like, Christ almighty, if you're good enough, there'll be coaches banging your door down. Yeah. So then is it at that point you kind of say, grand, let's relook at that. But then the other side of me then says, well, who is anybody to prevent that young fella from having, or that young lady from having that experience? But it's I suppose, arming them to know that you're very much against the odds here. Yeah. Because you're probably not going to the best program and you haven't kind of been recruited, so to speak, you know? So,
yeah. And so much has changed, especially over the last 5 to 10 years in comparison to, as you mentioned, Padraig Harrington turning pro at 24. Things were very different back then. but still him being such a stronghold in worldwide golf, people are going to listen to that. And they're,
but I think from listening to him, and I've been around him luckily in a technical setting a couple of times, amazing experience. But that guy is programmed to being getting the best out of himself, physically, technically, everything. Like great person to be around. But I think from seeing his swing evolve over the years, I think he embraced that, holy, I need to do something here quick. And did it, got better, just kept working technically every year, you know what I mean? And, you know, that's not to say that, like I remember, it was Howard Bennett was the guy, he was our national coach when I was 15, that's nearly 30 years ago now, and he was famously Harrington's coach, but I don't think Howard Bennett stayed in that camp too long, I'm pretty sure. I could be corrected, but I'm pretty sure that maybe not through anything negative, it might just be right, I need to progress here to get better. New set of eyes, different. But having the balls to do that is something I still see doesn't happen enough.
I saw a video of Padraig Harrington during the week, and he was speaking about how he's a fan of being a big fish in a small pond, which I thought was a super insight, given that it's usually the other way around, particularly when it comes to sports. But getting used to winning and getting used to cleaning up. As they say, winning is a habit. So what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, like for him, I think, what he's done on the seniors tour, like he's becoming the alpha of the tour. Like, you know, it's part of it too, you know, it's part of it. And there's another thing, like, you know, do you need to be a certain personality type to succeed in anything? But let's say like golf is an alpha sport, like it really, really is. Like, and the higher level you go up, it's a kill or be killed type of sport. Like, people look at golf, it's all, you know, bells and whistles and so on. But like, you're going to meet proper killers no matter what level. Like, I have guys in my head I've played on Irish teams with who are sweethearts and fellas who are killers, you know. And then, you know, I've played pro events and I've caddied for fellas in pro events at the highest level, and you just see them.
What's the persona of a killer versus sweetheart?
You mightn't see it straight up, but I think when the heat comes on and you see a guy under the pump and competing, you see it. I think you see when the wheels come off, you see it. I suppose what we're probably talking about is a level of resilience, but I look for it, not look for it, I spot it in people. There's a couple of young lads here in this club that I won't mention any names, but there's a few that jump to my head that they're just killers, because they have gone through ups and downs already, and they're dealing with it, you know what I mean? Which is great. Like we all have our paths, we all have our journeys, and I don't want anyone to think that this podcast is like a preach. It's not. It's just observations that I'm just trying to, like, there's a load of people starting or who are on the journey to succeed as a professional golfer. Just try and seek out people, experiences, levels of levels, being aware of those levels. It's so critical.
And then aside from even the talent side of things, there's the money it takes in terms of travel, gear, supplies, everything that goes with it. So what are other areas that can be completely forgotten about when heading down this road for somebody who has the talent and has decided to go for it?
It's not easy. Like, it's not easy even looking ahead now this year. Like, you're saying, I'll play in this and I'll play in this and I'll play in this, you know, and there's an expense to everything, you know what I mean? It's not easy, particularly if you're trying to look after one or two golfers in the households. You know, there's some families there's girls and boys playing at a high level all over the country. Like, I mean, that must be very physically challenging for that family. Like, some people can afford it and to manage it great, but a lot of people can't. So then when a child is progressing and college kind of comes knocking, you're kind of going, Jesus, like, I need my kid here to get the best scholarship possible. And then they mightn't be at that level. It's there's loads of things like that. And, you know, and then if let's say someone is at the level, coming from a family not in a wealthy position, turn pro, and it just goes up. Like, even the cost of going to, like, I would be a big advocate of saying, if you want to test yourself, go through the European Tour of School, the DP World Tour process, and see how you figure out. But sure, it's nearly $5,000 to enter it now. These, you know what I mean? It used to be 1,500 when I did it. But I think I did it a few years ago. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was $2,000 or $3,000. But like, that's going up as well. You know what I mean? So look, there's an awful lot there. Yeah, I could talk about this topic for forever because I'm kind of passionate about it, and I'm really passionate about if you have a child that is progressing and everything looks pretty good, like seek out the best people, seek them out. Like they're not like the coaching has levels as well. Like doctors have levels, lawyers have levels. Like there's levels. S&C coaches, it's just life. Like seek the people out. You know what I mean? They're there. You see them working with the best players. Some are more visible than others. Find them and just get around them and see, are you getting the same level of information, the same technical knowledge, the same awareness, the same drills, you know, that type of journey for you. And then you got to understand that the level of information you've gotten over the years may well have just gotten you to a certain level in your career. That's normal. Yeah. That's just normal. You know what I mean? That's not anybody's mistake. The problem is they persevere because the relationship is there. Oh, he's so nice to him, and you know, this type of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, again, comes back to, are you a killer or a sweetheart? Like, and some people are like, oh, we can't do that to him now because he was so good to him over the years. I'm like, well, that could be the rock you perish on, like, because it's just, again, you know, I'm not using anybody here as a. I did it myself, sure. Like, I'm not using anyone as an example here, but the further up the ladder you go to higher levels, you're going to come around people who've made those decisions years previous and are just better equipped, and that's just the way it is.
And then the other side of it is delaying specialisation as much as possible to prevent burnout, to have a well-rounded athlete, the psychological side of things that goes with that. And again, looking into things with Rory McIlroy, who apparently attributes a lot of his athletic abilities to soccer. There's DJ Johnson, who played basketball, Brooks Koepka, baseball, blah, blah. But I suppose when it comes to that, then that's just another side of things where people can almost rob their youth or rob the youth from the people they're dealing with, you know, so get them into a lot of sports.
Yeah, like my own feeling, especially now I have my own kids, like I would never, like let's say Billy's 4, he hits the ball well. I'm like, right, we're not going to stick on this because he's just going to get bored of it, right? Like he's a young kid and he likes to do other things. Like I've heard so many, you know, research papers that say, oh, at a certain age we really should decide, or like who really is to know? I think that's very individual, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolutely athletic development. I think I would certainly stand on the side of, and I do this with Billy when we're hitting balls, like fast, just fast. Yeah. Doesn't matter if you missed it, like just keep him, and he enjoys that. It's fun for him. Like we kind of say, right, up to the stars or up over the moon, or you know, something that he can relate to.
Brilliant.
But I think the only thing I would really push into like early development for kids, even if they are going to decide that I just like golf, I don't like team sports, like is really being focused on speed.
Okay.
You know, like there must be a speed part of your session, you know what I mean? Just that potentiation, getting used to moving quicker. Over time then you can apply technical to that. I think that's a pretty simple one.
Absolutely. To finish your experience on international squads with the likes of McIlroy and come back to, I suppose, levels, and you've told a few stories over in the past about like how obvious it was that this guy was a superstar.
Yeah, no, he was. He was. I always felt that Rory McIlroy was going to become Rory McIlroy now. I think most people did. Like he's the only guy. I'm 43 now. Like you'd show up at a Mullingar Scratch Cup or an East of Ireland or whatever it was, and there'd be 500 people there waiting to follow him. You know, I would be back in those days. I think I only got drawn with him a few times, but we were on a panel to go to the Brabazon Trophy one year, and we went, and he was a professional already at 15, 16. You know what I mean? And like, sure, 2 years later, gets his card and away he went. But out of anyone I've ever been around, he was a complete outlier. I've been around a lot of players now, like who have gone on to have successful professional careers, and you know, Shane's an amazing player as well, and he kind of did it slightly under the radar compared to Rory, but like it came to a point that, right, Lowry's going to be another really good player. But Rory was unbelievable and like could play. I suppose he had a great advantage in a lot of ways. I don't know what he would say about this, but he got to play in front of crowds every week. Unbelievable. Like I remember watching him in a play. I actually finished well myself in the tournament. It was like top 5 or something. Delighted with myself. And I think Rory and Gareth Shaw were playing a playoff in Mullingar on the 18th. and like proper tournament setup.
Really?
Like, yeah, people lining the fairways. Like
That's stress inoculation in itself.
unbelievable, but like what a training ground for him. You
Definitely,
know what I mean?
yeah.
And then to be able to hit shots under the gun. I actually think Garrett beat him in that playoff, and Garrett was a good player as well. But like, always had what my perception of Rory, unbelievable belief, great attitude, nice fella, like really nice guy, unbelievable technique, and was just a ballsy winner. You know?
Yeah.
So like when you have that from an early age, that's should go the right direction, you know.
They're the ingredients. All right, perfect. Well, that's episode 25, one of our longer ones, but it's a super listen altogether. So thanks for your time. We'll be back next week with episode 26.